Hello and welcome to the Scholar Information Webinar presented by the Berkeley International Office. First, let me introduce you to this video, the Scholar Information Webinar. Watching this video is the first step in the check-in process that was also communicated to you via email. The second step is to create an account with the JScholar portal in order to complete the online arrival confirmation form where you will be prompted to upload your I-94 admission record. Instructions on accessing your I-94 will be provided within the form. These steps are required so that we can report your arrival to the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. All the information we'll cover today is available on our website. You can bookmark the Scholar Information Meeting webpage to revisit this webinar. While you're visiting the Scholar Information Meeting webpage, you can register for the next Connect at the Berkeley International Office meeting, where you can meet fellow J1 scholars, get a travel signature, and stay informed. On this page, you may also find information on other programs that may be of interest to newly arrived international scholars. This presentation will cover the following items: the Berkeley International Office services and the purpose of your immigration documents, such as your DS 2019, visa stamp, and I-94 admission record. We'll also review travel considerations, the purpose and requirements of the J Exchange Visitor Program, as well as practical information for getting settled. Let's get started. Now let's talk about our office, the Berkeley International Office, also known as BIO. Our mission is to enhance the academic experiences of international students and scholars by providing the highest level of knowledge and expertise in advising, immigration services, advocacy, and programming to the UC Berkeley campus community. We want you to know that we are here to serve you and the international community at UC Berkeley. The Berkeley International Office is located on the 5th floor of 2150 Shattuck Avenue. We are unable to accommodate drop-ins for scholars without appointments. For appointments and questions, please email our office at jscholar@berkeley.edu. Let's take a closer look at who comprises our JScholar community. Of our JScholar population, the largest population is made up of visiting student researchers. If you have been given this appointment title, you may be a student back home, but here you are focusing on research under the guidance of a hosting faculty at UC Berkeley. While you may be a student back home, here you are a scholar. Postdocs also contribute to our JScholar population. If you have been given this appointment title, you have finished your PhD and are conducting postdoctoral research at UC Berkeley. There are several classifications of postdocs at UC Berkeley, and which type you are will depend on the type of funding you receive. Our JScholar population also includes those holding a visiting scholar appointment. If you have been given this appointment title, you may be on leave from an academic appointment or other position at a home institution and may be coming to participate in an educational, research, or other academic project under the supervision of a UC Berkeley faculty member. Finally, our JScholar population includes a number of different appointment titles from lecturers, visiting professors, associate researchers, and project scientists, just to name a few. These are for temporary research or teaching positions at UC Berkeley. It is important to mention that these appointment titles are given to you by UC Berkeley Human Resources and are not the same as your J1 visa category, but more on that later. The J1 Exchange Visitor Program is administered by the U.S. Department of State. It is aimed to increase mutual understanding and allows for visitors related to cultural and educational exchange purposes. An important aspect of this program is that it is an exchange, and your intention should be to return home at the end of your program. The U.S. Department of Homeland Security Student and Exchange Visitor Information System, also known as SEVIS, is a web-based information system used to process visa documents such as the Form DS 2019. It is also used to report changes, request benefits, such as extensions, transfers, and add dependents. We will use the CVIS system to report your arrival once you follow the instructions to report your arrival to Berkeley International Office through the J Scholar portal. As you have received your visa and have arrived in the U.S., you should be familiar with the I-901 CVIS fee. All new J1 scholars must pay this fee to the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, and it should be paid prior to their visa appointments. This fee helps to support CVIS so that we can continue to process visa documents and request benefits. It is important to keep the I-901 CVIS fee payment receipt for your records. At this time in the presentation, we'll review a number of important immigration documents. You may find it helpful to have your passport, Form DS-2019, and I-94 with you as you follow along. The first document we will review, with which you should be very familiar, is your passport. During your J Exchange Visitor Program, your passport must be valid at all times and for at least 6 months beyond your intended period of stay in the U.S. However, 12 months is recommended. This is why it is very important for you to always know when your passport will expire. If your passport will expire soon, you can typically renew it at your home country consulate inside the U.S. You should contact your embassy or consulate here in the U.S. for more information. As we move on to the next slide, let's talk about name consistency across your documents. It is important to be consistent and use your passport name on all official documents during your J Exchange Visitor Program. Your passport name is what is shown in the barcode at the bottom of your passport ID page. This is the name we use on your DS-2019, and it should match on all official documents, including your I-94, Social Security card if applicable, and driver's license if you apply for one. Consistency helps prevent delays or issues with your immigration status and access to services. The J1 Exchange Visitor Program Certificate of Eligibility, also known as the Form DS-2019, is used to obtain a J1 visa stamp at the U.S. Embassy and to gain J1 immigration status in the U.S. Most of you received your Form DS-2019 through a secure email and were advised to print and sign it at the bottom with a pen. If you have not signed it yet, please do so now. Before traveling internationally, you will also need to obtain a travel signature on your DS-2019, but we will tell you more about that later in this session. Now let's talk about the J1 visa stamp in your passport. The visa stamp is used to gain entry to the U.S. for your J1 program. You should think of it as a key which is needed to enter the U.S. It is important to keep your DS-2019 valid at all times, but the expiration of your visa only affects your ability to travel and re-enter the U.S. Canadian citizens are exempt from this requirement, but still must have their valid Form DS-2019 and valid passport. It is important to remember that unlike the passport, the J visa cannot be renewed inside the U.S. Visa renewal involves applying at a U.S. embassy or consulate overseas. Please keep in mind that if your visa has expired and you must travel internationally, you will need to apply for a new visa in order to re-enter the U.S. This can be risky since visa delays are possible. Before making travel plans, it is important to understand any immigration or travel restrictions that could impact your ability to re-enter the U.S. Please be sure to stay abreast of any updates by reading emails sent by our office, reviewing our immigration policy updates page, and checking in with our office about any travel that may be high risk. Also check your visa for the section marked Entries. If you have the letter M for multiple, it means that between the start and end date on your DS-2019 and before your visa expiration date, there is not a limit to the number of times you can enter and exit the U.S. using that visa stamp. Some of you may instead have a number listed under the section Entries. If you have a number, that means that you can use that visa stamp to enter the U.S. as many times as that number indicates. For example, if your visa shows the number 1, you can enter the U.S. one time with that visa, your initial entry. If you then need to travel internationally and re-enter the U.S. for a second time, You will need a new J visa before you can re-enter. Now that we've covered the visa stamp, let us move on to another important document, your I-94 admission record. You may also have an admission stamp in your passport, but if you do not have an admission stamp, it is not a problem. If you do have an admission stamp along with your I-94 record, both should show J1, your immigration status, and D/S, which means duration of status. Duration of status means that you have a valid immigration status until the end date listed on the DS 2019 if you maintain your status, plus a 30-day grace period. Pictured here is an example of the passport admission stamp. Now I will show you an example of a paper I-94 that may be stapled inside the passport upon arrival. At this time, the paper I-94 is generally only used for those coming to the US from Canada or Mexico by car or train. Lastly, here's an example of the printed I-94 electronic record that you can generate online by using your passport information. We recommend that you look up the I-94 record upon your arrival and any subsequent arrivals to the US to make sure there are no mistakes. You will upload your I-94 to report your arrival to us, and you will find more detailed instructions in the arrival reporting system. If your I-94 does not show J1 and D/S, please email jscholar@berkeley.edu as soon as possible so that we can advise you on how to get it corrected. To review, make sure that you keep your I-901 CVIS fee payment receipt for your records. Your passport needs to be valid for at least 6 months beyond the period of your intended stay in the US, though 12 months is recommended. It may not have an entry stamp, which is okay, but if it does, it should be stamped with J1 and D/S. You should always maintain a valid J1 DS 2019. You should have a J1 visa stamp, unless you are a Canadian citizen, as they are generally exempt from this requirement, and your electronic I-94 record should show J1 and D/S. For document security, it is a good idea to keep all of your documents for your records. Store the original Form DS 2019 you printed and hand-signed and a set of 2 copies in 2 separate and safe locations. Be sure to remember where those locations are. We generally recommend that you carry copies of your documents, but take the original documents with you when traveling outside of the Bay Area. What is the Bay Area, you ask? This is the Bay Area. It is literally the area around the bay. Each area has very different sights and experiences to offer. We encourage you to get to know the area while you are here. Let's talk about travel in a little more detail. When discussing domestic travel, we refer to the 50 states that make up the United States, which includes Alaska and Hawaii. Puerto Rico is also included as domestic travel, as it is a U.S. territory. That means that you can travel to any of the 50 states and Puerto Rico regardless of whether the visa in your passport is still valid. Remember, it only needs to be valid if traveling to the U.S., not within it. However, be sure that your travel does not include traveling through any other countries, such as Canada or Mexico, if your visa is expired. Before traveling internationally, please review our travel website, our immigration policy updates page, and any emails from our office about urgent or emerging travel or immigration issues. In addition, if you will be outside of the U.S. for over 30 days, this is considered an exception and requires prior approval. Before finalizing any plans to travel over 30 days, please consult our office so that we can review the purpose of your trip and explain any restrictions that may apply. If you are unsure about your travel situation or have specific questions, please email jscholar@berkeley.edu before confirming your travel plans. Please do not skip these steps. Since travel risks and requirements are subject to change, we want to make sure that you're fully prepared before you make any final arrangements. In addition, if you are in any of the following situations we consider to be special cases, we encourage you to consult with the Berkeley International Office before finalizing travel plans. If you will be outside of the U.S. for more than 30 days, as discussed in the previous slide, as this requires prior approval, if your DS 2019 will expire within 30 days of your expected return, if you have ever applied for U.S. legal permanent resident status, if you plan to travel to Canada or Mexico and you have an expired J visa, if your home country or country of legal permanent residence is subject to a travel ban, visa ban, or any executive order or action that may impact your ability to return. If you feel that you have a special travel situation that is not listed here, please email jscholar@berkeley.edu so that we can discuss your situation. And again, if you will be traveling internationally, please always check the Berkeley International Office website or email jscholar@berkeley.edu for travel updates and considerations. After you have reviewed the necessary travel resources and/or consulted with us if your travel may be a special case, the next step would be to review the documents you will need to return to the U.S. Your passport, valid for 6 months beyond the intended period of stay, though 12 is recommended. Make sure that you have a valid J visa stamp that is not expired on the date you plan to return and that allows multiple entries. Also bring your DS 2019 with a travel endorsement from the Berkeley International Office. If you will be traveling outside the US for more than 30 days and have already consulted with our office, you should obtain a support letter from your UC Berkeley faculty sponsor, for which we can provide a template. Email us at jscholar@berkeley.edu and we can provide you with additional guidance about travel over 30 days. And remember, always enter in J status during the dates of your J1 program. And always check the Berkeley International Office website for resources or email jscholar@berkeley.edu before you travel for the most up-to-date travel information and considerations. As I mentioned in the previous slide, you will want to make sure that you have received an international travel endorsement from the Berkeley International Office before you travel internationally. The travel endorsement is valid for 1 year or until the end of your program, whichever comes first. It is required that you have a valid travel signature at the time of re-entry into the U.S. It is important to check the validity of your travel signature each time prior to travel. If you have not received a travel signature yet or need a new one, there are 3 ways you can obtain a travel signature from our office. We recommend that you obtain a travel signature 2 to 4 weeks before your departure from the U.S. The first way is to schedule a brief appointment with a Berkeley International Office J1 Scholar Advisor. These appointments are in person at the Berkeley International Office and require that you bring your DS 2019, I-94, and passport with you. You can do so by emailing jscholar@berkeley.edu to schedule a time that works for you. The second way is to email our travel signature request form with copies of your most recent DS 2019 and J1 visa to jscholar@berkeley.edu. If you are requesting travel signatures for your dependents, please be sure to include copies of the J2 DS 2019 and J2 visa as well. The updated DS 2019 with a travel signature will be processed and emailed to you within 5 business days. Last but not least, the third way is to attend a Connect at Berkeley International Office with fellow J1 scholars where you can obtain a travel signature in person. Now let's get into the J1 Exchange Visitor Regulations. On Section 5 of your DS 2019, you will find your J1 Exchange Visitor category. There are 15 categories in total, and UC Berkeley sponsors 9 categories. The J1 category you hold was determined based on your academic objectives at UC Berkeley. For example, the Research Scholar category means that you are doing research primarily, but you may also teach. The Professor category is for those who will be primarily teaching or lecturing, but may also conduct research. The Short-Term Scholar category is for research, teaching, or lecturing for only up to 6 months total. The Student Non-Degree category is for a prescribed full course of study, and the Student Intern category is for a research internship on campus. It is important to remember that each individual category comes with its own rules and restrictions. Though you and a friend may both be in the J1 Exchange Visitor Program, you may have different J1 categories, and you may be subject to different rules based on your category. Those coming in the research scholar, professor, and short-term scholar categories are coming primarily to conduct research or teach. The U.S. Department of State allows auditing only one course if you are in one of these categories, since the primary activity must be research or teaching. Also important to know is that your length of stay in the U.S. is determined by your appointment and your J1 category. For example, the maximum length of stay for the short-term scholar category is 6 months, no exceptions, and both the research scholar and professor categories have a maximum length of stay of 5 years. The J1 Exchange Visitor Program is a non-immigrant visa classification for academic and cultural exchange, and there are a number of limitations put in place to encourage this exchange. Before we review these rules, I would suggest taking a look at your DS 2019 form and noting the J1 category. The first limitation we'll discuss is the 12-month bar. The 12-month bar does not apply to those in the J1 Research Scholar, Professor, or Short-Term Scholar categories. If you are in any other category, including the student intern or student non-degree categories, and you will have been physically present in the U.S. for at least 6 months, then this rule will apply to you. After your program ends, if you wish to return for a new J program in either the Research Scholar or Professor category, you would need to wait 12 months from the date you leave the U.S. before you can start a new Research Scholar or Professor J program. This does not mean that you cannot enter the U.S. in a different visa status, such as a B or an F. The next rule is the 24-month bar. This rule applies only to those in the J1 Research Scholar and Professor categories. It does not apply to those in the Short-Term Scholar, Student Non-Degree, or Student Intern categories. If your current J program is in the Research Scholar or Professor category and you wish to return in the future for a new J program in the Research Scholar or Professor category, you will need to be out of J status for 24 months before you can begin the new Research Scholar or Professor category J program. This limitation applies to both the J1 and their J2 dependents. For example, Edward Lee was a J1 research scholar at UCB for his visiting student researcher appointment from July 1st, 2024 to June 30th, 2025. He has now been invited by the UC Berkeley Physics Department to be a postdoc for 1 year. How soon can Edward return to the U.S. on a new J1 Research Scholar program? Edward would be able to return on a new J1 Research Scholar program on July 1st, 2027 at the very earliest. While the 12 and 24-month bars were limitations based on specific categories, the 2-year home country residence requirement can be a limitation for anyone who is or has been in the J Exchange Visitor Program, regardless of your J category. You may or may not be subject to this requirement based on government funding, either home government or U.S. government, or based on your country of legal permanent residence skill list. As UC Berkeley does not sponsor the alien physician category, you would not be subject for this reason. If you are subject to the 2-year home residence requirement, you will need to physically reside in your country of legal permanent residence for an aggregate of 2 years before you can apply for an H, L, K visa, or legal permanent residency, also known as a green card. You are also not eligible to change your visa status within the U.S. Being subject does not mean that you are barred from the U.S. You can still return to the U.S. in any other visa status for which you are eligible, such as a J, B, or F visa. J2 dependents are subject to the 2-year home residence requirement if the J1 is subject. The Department of State does have a process through which you can apply for a waiver of this requirement. However, receiving a waiver may affect your ability to receive future J1 benefits, such as program extensions and transfers. So the timing of the waiver is very important. Because of this, we encourage you to attend a 2-year requirement workshop hosted by Berkeley International Office and/or make an appointment with a scholar advisor before applying. Now we're going to discuss how to maintain your legal status while you're in the US by following the 5 basic rules. 1. Maintain your J program activities, meaning no extra employment. 2. Keep documents valid and accurate. 3. Report early departure. 4. Report change of address, US phone number, and email. 5. And maintain health insurance. J1 exchange visitors are only allowed to receive payment as specifically noted on the Form DS 2019. As the J visa is not a work visa, you are not authorized to apply for a part-time job. You may be authorized to receive travel reimbursement or honorarium for short-term lectures or consultations such as an off-campus talk, a presentation, and/or a conference. If you may be compensated or receive payment, the J regulations require that you first receive authorization from our office before engaging in those activities. For more information, please review our website. As part of maintaining your J1 status, you will need to ensure that you report any changes to your J1 program to our office. Some examples of changes to your J1 program are changes to your site of activity, changes in financial support, change in hosting department, change in the duration of your program. Please note that this list is not comprehensive, so if there will be any changes to your J1 program, please contact Bio in advance by emailing jscholar@berkeley.edu. The funding source for your J1 program as it is listed on your Form DS 2019 in the middle left corner. As mentioned in the previous slide, if your funding source for your J1 program will change, it is required that you report this change. Please contact your department and Bio at jscholar@berkeley.edu in advance, as this may require additional consultation. In addition, your Form DS 2019 may need to be updated to reflect the new financial source and amount. Additionally, if you need to extend your J program, be aware that you must extend before the DS 2019 end date. Please be sure to contact your host department at least 4 months prior to the expiration date of your DS 2019 if possible. The campus process and timing can vary, so it's never too early to inquire about the extension process with your host department. As a benefit of the J Exchange Visitor Program, you have a grace period of 30 days prior to the start of your J program and a grace period of 30 days at the end of your J program. During your grace period, we cannot extend or transfer your J program, which is why it is important to let us know of these situations before your end date. You also cannot conduct research or teach and get paid during your grace period. The grace period should only be used to settle affairs and prepare to return home. Per federal regulations, J exchange visitors in UC Berkeley are required to report early departures through the CEPA system. J1 scholars should inform the host department, human resources, and Berkeley International Office if they will be ending their program more than 15 days before the end date of the DS 2019. J2 dependents should inform Berkeley International Office, jscholar@berkeley.edu, if their final departure from the United States is prior to the J1 exchange visitor's departure date. J1 scholars are required to report any change of local U.S. address within 10 days via the J Scholar portal. For further instructions, please refer to the link below and in the video description. In addition to updating your address via the J Scholar portal, please consult with your host department regarding whether any other updates are needed. Changes in J2 email address must also be reported within 10 days of change by emailing jscholar@berkeley.edu. It is important that the address you report is your local residential address, complete with the room number or apartment number if applicable. Campus departmental addresses, P.O. boxes, and foreign addresses are not acceptable for immigration purposes. Be sure to indicate your address in the format as shown in the example. Health insurance is required during you and your family's entire stay and should meet the U.S. Department of State requirements, which include medical evacuation and repatriation benefits. For more information and a list of contacts, please review our website, which can also be found in the link below in the video description. Next, we will look at academic life at UC Berkeley. One of the norms of a U.S. university environment is the freedom to express oneself in open dialogue and discussion. Scholars should be able to express themselves without fear of any intimidation from others, and that any views that they share in office, lab, and seminar discussions or public forums will not be used in an adverse or negative way that could lead to their harm. Scholars should be aware that there are certain rights that go along with discoveries or inventions by faculty or other scholars. For additional information about intellectual property, you are encouraged to review the presentation found at the link on this slide. Now we will discuss some practical information that will be helpful for your transition. A CalNet ID is the UC Berkeley username and passphrase combination that you will need for all campus online resources, such as email, calendar, library, and other document sharing applications. The Cal One card is your on-campus identification card, which will give you access to campus buildings and services. If you have any questions about accessing your CalNet ID or obtaining the Cal One card, contact your host department or human resources contact. J1 and J2s need to complete some U.S. tax forms each year, even if you are not paid in the U.S. For questions about tax treaties and Glacier, email glacieradmin@berkeley.edu. The Berkeley International Office does not offer U.S. tax advice, but we do offer information on our website, sponsor tax webinars every spring, and we offer free online tax filing software to assist you with your federal tax requirements. Please keep in mind that if you were not in the U.S. during the previous calendar year, you do not need to complete any tax form this year, but you will need to the following year. For more information, please review our website. A Social Security number is required if you are receiving U.S. payments or benefits from UC Berkeley. A Social Security number is not required if you are not receiving compensation in the U.S. J1 exchange visitors in the student intern and student non-degree categories are not eligible unless receiving compensation from a U.S. source. J2 dependents are not eligible unless applying for USCIS work permission. If you need to get a Social Security number, please wait at least 10 calendar days from entering the U.S. and reporting your arrival to Berkeley International Office before applying for the Social Security number. For more information, please review our website. If you will be applying for a California driver's license or a California ID, please review our website for information about driving in California. You will also want to visit the DMV website at www.dmv.ca.gov. Notice that this is the California State DMV website. Each state has its own rules and regulations when it comes to driving. If you will be taking public transportation, visit the Parking and Transportation website for information about transportation options. Remember that the legal drinking age for anyone in the U.S. is 21. Alcohol and drug-related arrests and convictions can have serious consequences for J1 visa holders. Be safe and avoid activities that could put your visa or legal status at risk. Additionally, visa holders must comply with federal U.S. laws. Federal U.S. law prohibits possession or use of marijuana. So, although California state law allows for marijuana use, federal law does not, and you must follow federal law. One more important topic is safety at UC Berkeley and in the Bay Area. If you find yourself in an emergency on campus or off campus, please use the emergency numbers on this slide. In addition, please keep the following safety tips in mind. Always lock your doors and windows and avoid leaving valuables in plain sight, whether in your care or in a public place. Be alert at ATMs and avoid counting cash in public. On public transit, hold onto your phone, wallet, and bags tightly. Above all, stay aware of your surroundings, especially when walking at night or in less familiar places. And if your primary mode of transportation will be a bicycle, we recommend using a high-quality lock. Staying informed and alert can go a long way in helping you stay safe. Scams are dishonest, illegal schemes that aim to make money by deceiving people, and unfortunately, they do happen. Common examples include housing scams, where fake listings are posted online, phone scams, often impersonating law enforcement or immigration officers, and phishing emails, which might look official but are meant to trick you into giving up passwords or sensitive data. For more information on scams and examples of common scams and how you can protect yourself from them, please review our website at the following link on this slide. In the event that you believe you have been the victim of a scam or a crime, please contact our office as soon as possible by emailing jscholar@berkeley.edu. In addition, there are certain types of incidents that we are required to report to the U.S. Department of State. Some examples include fraud, lost or stolen immigration documentation, and serious medical issues. A full list is provided on the Department of State's Bridge USA website. However, this list is not exhaustive, so if your health, safety, or overall well-being is ever a concern, please reach out to us as soon as possible. I'll also touch on some information about J2 dependents. A legally married spouse or child under the age of 21 may hold J2 status. Even if you did not bring your spouse or child with you on this trip, they may be added as a J2 dependent if they wish to come later in your program. If a J2 dependent will be entering the U.S. without the J1, they should carry support documentation such as copies of the J1's DS 2019 passport and visa stamp, in addition to their J2 documents. J2s may apply for work authorization through USCIS once they have arrived in the U.S., but this process generally takes several months. J2 family members may study part-time or full-time. For more information, please review our website. Lastly, though you're mainly here to do research, it is important to take time for cultural activities as well. Feel free to connect with the Berkeley Postdoc Association and Visiting Scholar and Postdoc Affairs Office to learn about opportunities to get involved. In addition, be sure to tune in to newsletters sent by our office for any upcoming events with fellow J1 scholars that may be of interest to you. Be sure that your email address is up to date by reviewing and updating the J Scholar portal. This concludes the Scholar Information webinar. Remember, the next step is to complete the arrival confirmation form to report your arrival to the Berkeley International Office following the instructions that were emailed to you. Thank you for viewing our webinar, and we hope you have a wonderful experience while you're here. Welcome to Berkeley.